I'm a 36-year-old guy, married to my wife, Jessica, who's 34. We've been together for 6 years and don't have kids, which was a mutual decision. I thought our marriage was solid, not perfect, but nothing to make me question her loyalty. Lately, though, I'm starting to think I've been wrong. Jessica has always been into fitness. A couple of years ago, she got serious about it, spending more time at the gym, hiring a personal trainer, and even sharing her progress on Instagram. I supported her, even encouraged her to get the trainer because it made her happy. That's when he entered the picture, Brandon. He's her trainer, a guy in his late 20s, with that classic six-pack, smooth talker vibe. At first, I didn't think much of him. It's his job to be encouraging, right? For a while, it was fine. She'd come home from the gym and tell me about her workouts, how Brandon was helping her with her form or pushing her limits. I was proud of her dedication. But over the past 6 months, things started feeling different. Her gym sessions started stretching longer. 2 hours, sometimes 3. When I asked why, she laughed it off, saying, "You can't rush results, babe." She also started putting more effort into how she looked for the gym, new expensive workout gear, makeup, perfume. I chalked it up to her wanting to feel confident, but it still felt off. Last week, a friend sent me a video from the gym. He'd spotted Jessica training with Brandon and decided to film it because, as he put it, it looked a little too cozy. In the video, she's laughing, touching his arm, and giving him a look I haven't seen her give me in a long time. My stomach dropped watching it. That night, I brought it up to her. "What's going on with you and Brandon?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. She laughed, dismissing it immediately. "Oh my God, you're being ridiculous. That's just how I joke with him." Then she flipped it on me, calling me insecure and jealous for no reason. Her tone was so confident, so dismissive, that I started second-guessing myself. But since then, I've noticed more. She's glued to her phone, constantly smiling at texts she won't let me see. If I even glance her way, she locks her screen. Last night, I suggested coming to the gym with her sometime, and she shot it down faster than I expected, saying, "It's my time to focus, and you just distract me." I don't want to jump to conclusions, but something doesn't feel right. I've always trusted Jessica, but now I can't shake this gnawing feeling. Am I overthinking things? Could this all be innocent, and I'm just making something out of nothing? Or is there more going on than she's letting on? I don't know how to approach this without pushing her further away. After seeing the video from the gym and noticing Jessica's strange behavior, I couldn't ignore the uneasy feeling any longer. Something was off, and I needed to get to the bottom of it. The tipping point came one night when Jessica was sitting on the couch, glued to her phone as usual. She was laughing quietly to herself, and when I asked her what was so funny, she quickly locked her screen and said, "Oh, just a meme Brandon sent me. Nothing important." That response didn't sit right with me. Why was her trainer sending her memes late at night? Why did she act so defensive? The next morning, I made a decision I never thought I'd make. I installed tracking software on her phone. I know it's an invasion of privacy, but I couldn't stand feeling like I was being gaslit. I needed clarity. I also decided to confront Brandon. That same evening, I stopped by the gym under the pretense of wanting to sign up for a membership. When I introduced myself and mentioned Jessica, his reaction was subtle but telling. He smiled politely and said, "Oh yeah, Jessica's awesome. Super dedicated." But his tone felt rehearsed, almost too smooth. I didn't press further, not wanting to give him any warning that I was digging into their relationship. That night, I started going through the tracking data. At first, everything seemed normal, just her usual texts and social media activity. But then I found a messaging app one didn't even know she used. And it was a string of messages between her and Brandon, and they weren't the kind of messages you'd expect between a trainer and a client. The texts weren't overtly romantic, but they had a tone that made my stomach turn. "I love talking to you. You just get me in a way no one else does. Today was so much fun. Thanks for always making me smile. We should grab coffee soon." I feel like we need a gym-free hangout. The words, gym-free hangout, felt like a punch to the gut. This wasn't professional banter, it was personal, far too personal for my comfort. The next day, she stayed late at the gym again. When she got home, I asked her directly, "How's Brandon?" She hesitated for just a moment before answering with a casual, "He's good." "Why?" I pressed a little more, and she laughed, brushing me off like I was being ridiculous. "You're acting paranoid," she said. "I spend a lot of time with him because he's my trainer." "That's it." Her response only made me more suspicious. The way she downplayed it, the quick change in her tone, it all felt rehearsed, like she'd practiced this explanation in her head. Now I'm stuck in a strange limbo. I don't have definitive proof of an affair yet, but I have enough to know something's wrong. Do I confront her now, or do I keep digging? Part of me wants to demand answers immediately, but another part knows she's good at twisting things and turning the blame on me. I need to be smart about this. The messages and her behavior make it hard to believe this is all innocent, but I'm also scared of what I might find if I push further. For now, I'm trying to figure out the next step. The suspicion was unbearable, and I couldn't just sit around wondering. After finding those initial messages, I decided to wait a little longer to gather more evidence. What I discovered left no room for doubt. 2 nights ago, Jessica told me she was going out for coffee with a friend. She didn't offer any details, which was strange because she usually overshares when she's meeting someone. I checked the tracking software, and her location showed up at a cafe. Moments later, Brandon's location pinged at the same spot. I couldn't stay home. I drove to the cafe, parked a short distance away, and walked in. There they were, sitting in the corner, leaning close, laughing like nothing else in the world mattered. She looked at him with an expression I hadn't seen in years, completely captivated. I couldn't hear their conversation, but it didn't take a genius to figure out what was going on. I left without confronting them. Part of me wanted to storm over and demand answers, but I knew it would turn into a public scene, and I wasn't ready for that. Instead, I went back home, opened the tracking software again, and looked deeper into her hidden files. That's when I found it. Pictures of them together at the gym, Brandon with his arm around her. Photos from the cafe that night, like she wanted to document their little rendezvous. And then, the texts. They had crossed every line imaginable. "Last night was amazing. Can't stop thinking about it. You make me feel so alive, like I haven't in years. I can't wait until next week. Same place?" It felt like a slap in the face. This wasn't just flirting or emotional cheating, they had gone all the way. They had planned their next meetup at a hotel. That night, when she came home from the gym, she acted like everything was normal. I didn't say a word, not yet. I knew I needed to confront her, but I wanted to do it when I was fully prepared. She smiled at me, kissed me on the cheek, and asked how my day was, completely oblivious that I knew everything. Now, I'm planning my next steps. Confronting her in the heat of the moment won't work, she'll twist things or deny it all. I need to be calm, deliberate, and unshakable. I also plan to report Brandon to his gym management. He's crossed a professional boundary and hurt more than just me in the process. I've spent the last 2 nights staring at my phone, reading and rereading the messages. It's devastating to see it spelled out so clearly, but at least now I know the truth. The hardest part will be deciding how to face her, and how to start over once this chapter of my life is closed. I couldn't sit in silence anymore. The weight of everything I'd discovered was eating me alive. After seeing the texts and pictures, I knew I had all the proof I needed, but I wanted to approach this in a way that didn't leave any room for manipulation or excuses. That evening, I waited until Jessica came home from her late gym session. She walked in smiling, acting like everything was normal. She dropped her gym bag by the door and started chatting about her workout like nothing had happened. It took everything in me to stay calm, but I needed to confront her when she least expected it. "Jessica, we need to talk," I said, keeping my tone steady. She immediately looked wary. "What's this about?" she asked, forcing a laugh. I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos and texts I'd found. Her face went pale, and for a split second, I saw genuine panic in her eyes. Then, just as quickly, she switched gears. "What the hell is this?" she snapped, trying to snatch my phone. "Are you seriously spying on me? That's such a violation of my privacy." I stood my ground. "Don't even try to flip this on me, Jessica. I'm not the one sneaking around, lying, and meeting my trainer at cafes or hotels. You've been caught. Stop pretending." She tried to deny it at first, saying Brandon was just a friend, and the messages were taken out of context. But when I showed her the explicit ones, the ones where she mentioned the other night and meeting at a hotel, her demeanor changed. She went from defensive to outright hostile. "Fine," she yelled. "You want the truth? Yeah, I've been seeing Brandon." "So what? You're never around, you don't care about me anymore, and he actually makes me feel wanted." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I've supported her in everything: her gym sessions, her goals, her career. I even encouraged her to get a trainer in the first place. And now she was blaming me for her affair? "You're seriously going to stand there and blame me for this?" I asked, my voice shaking with anger. "You lied to me, manipulated me, and now you're making this my fault? You're the one who's been distant," she shouted back. "You think sitting at home and playing on your phone counts as a marriage? At least Brandon listens to me." At that point, I realized there was no saving this. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't even trying to deny it anymore. All she cared about was justifying her actions and shifting the blame onto me. The argument spiraled out of control. She started throwing out every excuse in the book, accusing me of being too boring or not understanding her needs. I tried to stay calm, but I couldn't take the gaslighting anymore. "This isn't about me," I said firmly. "This is about you betraying me and our marriage. You made a choice to cheat, and now you have to live with the consequences." Her response? She laughed, a cold, bitter laugh, and said, "Maybe I wouldn't have had to cheat if you were half the man Brandon is." That was it. Something inside me broke. I didn't yell, didn't cry, didn't lash out. I just said, "We're done," and walked away. I left her standing there, still yelling about how this was somehow all my fault. Now I'm sitting in my car, trying to process everything. I've already called a divorce attorney and plan to meet with them tomorrow. I've also drafted an email to the gym's management, attaching screenshots of her messages with Brandon. He won't get off scot-free either. I'm hurt, angry, and honestly, relieved in some strange way. There's no more guessing, no more pretending. The mask is off, and I see her for who she really is. I'll keep you updated on what happens next. For now, I just need to get through the night. The day after the confrontation, Jessica tried a new tactic: damage control. She started texting me nonstop, alternating between apologizing and justifying her actions. One moment she'd say, "I made a mistake, but it's because I wasn't happy." And the next, "If you weren't so distant, none of this would have happened." It was exhausting. I ignored most of her messages and focused on what needed to be done. My meeting with the divorce attorney was productive. They explained the process, what to expect, and how to protect myself financially. Since Jessica and I don't have kids, the attorney assured me it would be a relatively straightforward divorce, but given her manipulative nature, I shouldn't expect it to be drama-free. Meanwhile, I sent the email to the gym's management. I kept it professional, laying out the facts and attaching screenshots of the messages between Jessica and Brandon. I didn't hear back immediately, but I knew it was only a matter of time. Later that evening, Jessica showed up at the house unannounced. She'd stayed with a friend the night before but apparently decided she wanted to talk. I let her in, mostly because I wanted her to hear the finality in my voice. "I know you're angry," she started, sitting on the couch like she still had some right to be there. "But we can work through this. It doesn't have to end like this." I stared at her, stunned by her audacity. "You didn't even try to save this marriage, Jessica. You made your choice the moment you decided to cheat. There's nothing to work through. Her tone shifted. You're being so dramatic. Couples go through stuff like this all the time. It doesn't mean we have to throw everything away. Couples go through problems, not betrayal. I shot back. You didn't just have a fling, Jessica. You lied to my face for months, made me feel like I was crazy, and blamed me when I caught you. That's not something I can forgive. She got defensive again, her face twisting into that familiar expression of contempt. Fine. If you want to ruin your life over this, go ahead. But don't pretend you were some perfect husband. You've barely been present for years. I didn't rise to the bait this time. I just stood up and said, I'll send you the paperwork when it's ready. You can leave now. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I sat there in silence, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. It wasn't the ending I wanted for our marriage, but it was the ending I needed. Later that night, I got a response from the gym. Brandon had been suspended pending an investigation. Apparently, this wasn't the first time his relationships with clients had raised concerns. The manager thanked me for bringing it to their attention and promised to take action. It felt like a small victory in an otherwise overwhelming situation. Now I'm focusing on regaining control of my life. The house feels emptier without Jessica, but also lighter. For the first time in months, I don't feel like I'm walking on eggshells or second-guessing myself. There's still a long road ahead, but I've taken the first steps. What she did won't define me. This chapter is closing, and I'm determined to move forward, no matter how messy it gets. A few days after Jessica stormed out, I got a call from one of her friends, Lauren. We've always been friendly, and I figured she was checking in to get my side of the story. What I didn't expect was for her to spill even more dirt about Jessica. Look, I wasn't sure if I should tell you this. Lauren started, her voice low like she didn't want anyone overhearing. But I think you deserve to know. Jessica's been acting shady for months, not just with Brandon, but with other guys too. I was stunned. Other guys? What are you talking about? She hesitated, then said, There's this guy from her office she used to talk about a lot. I thought it was weird how much she mentioned him, but I didn't want to assume anything. Then I saw her out with him once, at a bar late at night. She told me it was just drinks with coworkers, but it didn't look innocent. It felt like a punch to the gut. All this time, I thought Brandon was the only one, but now it seemed like Jessica had been lying and sneaking around even more than I'd realized. Lauren went on. I wanted to tell you earlier, but she's my friend, and I didn't know if it was my place. After hearing about the whole trainer thing, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. She's not who you think she is. I thanked her for telling me, even though it felt like I was sinking deeper into a pit of betrayal. It was bad enough knowing she'd been unfaithful with Brandon, but now I was questioning everything about our marriage. How many lies had she told me? How long had this been going on? Fueled by anger and a need for closure, I dug through the tracking software one last time. Sure enough, I found evidence that she'd been texting the guy from work, someone named Chris. The messages were more subtle than with Brandon, but the undertones were there. Flirty banter, late-night conversations, even mentions of grabbing drinks after work. It wasn't hard to connect the dots. The next morning, Jessica called me. I hadn't heard from her since she left, and her tone was oddly cheerful, like nothing had happened. I think we should talk again, she said. This whole thing has been blown way out of proportion. I agreed to meet her, but only because I wanted answers. We met at a neutral spot, a coffee shop neither of us frequented. She walked in looking composed, like she was ready to charm her way out of trouble. I've been thinking, she started, stirring her coffee. Maybe we can work on this. Go to counseling or something. I stared at her, trying to decide if she was serious or just trying to save face. Are you even capable of being honest, Jessica? I asked. Because I'm done with the lies. She rolled her eyes. I already admitted I messed up with Brandon. What else do you want from me? Maybe the truth about Chris, I said, watching her face closely. Her expression froze for a split second before she recovered. Chris? He's just a friend from work. Don't start making this into something it's not. I have the messages, I said, pulling out my phone. So don't insult my intelligence. Her composure cracked. Fine, I had drinks with him a few times. Big deal. It's not like we slept together. You're just looking for reasons to paint me as the bad guy. At that point, I realized there was no reasoning with her. She wasn't sorry, she wasn't remorseful, and she clearly had no intention of taking accountability. This isn't about painting you as the bad guy, I said, standing up. You did that all on your own. I'm done here. She called after me as I walked out, but I didn't look back. For the first time, I felt like I was finally taking control. I've already sent the finalized divorce papers to her, and now I'm focused on moving forward. It's not just about ending the marriage anymore, it's about reclaiming my life from the mess she created. The fallout from all of this has been relentless. A few days after sending the email to the gym, I got a call from their manager. Apparently, they took my complaint very seriously. Brandon was not only suspended but also put under investigation for other complaints that had surfaced after mine. It turns out he had a history of overstepping boundaries with clients, but nothing had ever been formally reported until now. The manager thanked me for bringing the issue to their attention and assured me that Brandon's behavior was unacceptable. He hinted that Brandon would likely lose his job once the investigation wrapped up. Hearing that gave me a strange sense of vindication. At least one part of this mess was being addressed, and Brandon was facing consequences for his actions. As for Jessica, she's been spiraling. After I walked out on her at the coffee shop, she started sending me increasingly erratic messages. Some were apologetic, begging me to give her another chance, while others were full of rage, accusing me of ruining her life. She even tried to twist the gym situation, claiming I was destroying Brandon's career out of spite. Her desperation reached a new level when she showed up at the house unannounced again. This time, she was crying, holding a stack of old photos from when we first started dating. Is this really how you want it to end? She sobbed. We were so happy once. We can get back to that if you just let me explain. I stayed calm and told her there was nothing left to explain. Jessica, you didn't just make a mistake. You made a series of choices that hurt me and destroyed our marriage. There's no going back from that. Her tears dried up quickly, and the anger returned. You're throwing everything away because of one stupid mistake. You're not perfect either, you know. That's when I realized there was no point in engaging further. I told her to leave and that any future communication would go through my lawyer. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard it rattled the windows. A day later, Lauren texted me with more updates. Apparently, Jessica has been venting to their friend group, trying to spin the narrative in her favor. She's been telling everyone that I'm controlling and vindictive, conveniently leaving out the part where she cheated, not just with Brandon, but potentially with Chris and who knows who else. What surprised me was how many people didn't buy her story. Lauren said most of their mutual friends are distancing themselves from her because they've seen her manipulative behavior firsthand. That gave me some comfort. It's one thing to lose a spouse, but it's another to feel isolated or unsupported. Knowing people see the truth makes it a little easier to move on. Now I'm focused on finalizing the divorce and cutting ties completely. Jessica's attempts to manipulate me aren't working anymore, and I'm done letting her control the narrative. The gym's investigation into Brandon is wrapping up, and I've heard through the grapevine that his reputation is in shambles. There's still a lot to sort through emotionally, but for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm moving forward. The truth is out, the toxic relationship is ending, and I'm starting to see a future without all the lies and betrayal. It's not easy, but it's necessary. The divorce proceedings have officially begun, and, as expected, Jessica is making things as difficult as possible. Despite claiming she wanted to work things out just weeks ago, her attitude has shifted to full-blown hostility now that she realizes I'm serious about ending things. My lawyer warned me this might happen, so I've been trying to stay one step ahead. Jessica is contesting nearly everything. She's even trying to fight me over trivial household items, like furniture she never cared about before. It's obvious she's being petty and trying to drag this out, but I refuse to stoop to her level. The most frustrating part is her attempt to twist the narrative. She's claiming that my actions, specifically exposing Brandon to the gym, were an act of malicious intent to humiliate her. She's even floated the idea of suing me for emotional distress, which is absurd considering all the evidence I have of her cheating. Meanwhile, Brandon's life seems to be imploding. A mutual acquaintance from the gym told me he's been officially fired, and his reputation in the fitness community is tanking. Apparently, other clients came forward with stories about inappropriate behavior after my complaint. While I'm not the kind of person who finds joy in someone else's downfall, I can't help but feel like justice is being served. He made his bed, just like Jessica. On a personal level, this whole ordeal has been a roller coaster. Some days I feel strong, ready to tackle whatever comes next. Other days, the weight of it all hits me, how quickly someone I trusted completely could turn into a stranger. I've started seeing a therapist to process everything, and it's been helpful to talk to someone neutral about the betrayal, the gaslighting, and the lingering anger. Jessica's latest move was to show up at my workplace unannounced. She claimed she wanted to talk, but it quickly turned into a public argument. She accused me of turning everyone against her and said I was ruining her life. I stayed calm, telling her that her choices were the only thing ruining anything, but the confrontation left me rattled. My coworkers were understanding, but I hate that she dragged my personal drama into my professional life. One silver lining in all of this is the support I've been receiving from friends and family. People I haven't talked to in years have reached out after hearing about the situation, offering encouragement, and reminding me that I'm doing the right thing. It's been a humbling reminder that even in the darkest moments, there's light to be found. The divorce will likely take a few more months to finalize, especially with Jessica's antics. My lawyer is confident we'll get through this without her walking away with more than she's entitled to, but it's still a draining process. For now, my focus is on rebuilding. I've started working out again, not for anyone else, but for myself. It's helping me clear my head and feel like I'm taking control of my life again. Slowly but surely, I'm starting to see a future where this chapter is just a distant memory, and I'm ready to turn the page. The divorce is finally over. After months of back and forth, petty arguments, and emotional chaos, the papers are signed, and Jessica is officially out of my life. It feels like a massive weight has been lifted off my shoulders. For the first time in a long time, I can breathe again. Jessica's attempts to drag things out didn't work. My lawyer was a rock star, keeping everything on track and ensuring she didn't take advantage of the situation. Despite her tantrums, she walked away with only what she was legally entitled to. She fought hard for more, claiming she deserved compensation for the life we built together, but the evidence of her infidelity made her arguments laughable in court. The final hearing was uneventful, just the two of us sitting in the same room for what I hope will be the last time. She looked defeated, but even then, she couldn't resist throwing in a snide comment as we left. "You'll regret this someday," she said, her voice cold and sharp. I didn't respond. What's left to say to someone who's burned every bridge? As for Brandon, I heard through the grapevine that he's struggling to find work. The fitness community is tight-knit, and words spread fast about why he was fired. Some of Jessica's friends who still talk to her said they're no longer seeing each other. Apparently, their perfect connection couldn't survive the fallout of their own choices. I can't say I'm surprised. Since then, I've been focused on rebuilding. I moved into a new place, a smaller, cozier home that feels like mine. I've cut ties with most of the mutual friends Jessica and I had, keeping only those who truly had my back. It's been refreshing to surround myself with people who genuinely care about me. Therapy has been a game changer. I've started unpacking not just the betrayal, but the years of subtle manipulation and emotional neglect I endured. Looking back, I can see how I ignored the red flags, convinced myself things were fine when they weren't. It's not easy to admit, but it's helping me grow. A week ago, I had a small gathering with close friends to celebrate the end of this chapter. It wasn't about the divorce itself, but about reclaiming my life. We laughed, shared stories, and toasted to new beginnings. It felt like a reset, a chance to finally move forward. The biggest lesson I've learned through all of this is that self-worth doesn't come from a relationship. I spent years trying to make Jessica happy, thinking that if I gave enough, she'd reciprocate. But love isn't about endless sacrifice. It's about mutual respect, trust, and honesty, none of which she gave me. I'm not bitter anymore. Hurt, yes. Angry at times. But I've let go of the need for revenge or validation. Jessica and Brandon have to live with the choices they made, and I get to live with the freedom of a fresh start. Here's to a brighter future. I'm ready to embrace it.